The question is on the resolution. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The resolution is adopted. We want to welcome Miss Barbara and her family and friends who are here today, congratulate you, and extend our best wishes and the courtesies of the House. The resolution is open for co-sponsorship. Should you choose not to be a co-sponsor, please notify the desk. Senator DeFrancisco.
Yes, we have one more resolution by Senator Hamilton, 5296. Could we please read the title only and recognize Senator Hamilton?
Resolution number 5296, the Secretary will read.
Legislative Resolution number 5296 by Senator Hamilton, recognizing the Barbados National Heroes Day Lecture 2016, Developing Tomorrow's Heroes Today, on April 28, 2016.
Senator Hamilton.
As you know, Barbados is the island country of my family, the most literate country in the world with a 100% literacy rate, always stressing education, education, education. I'd like to also recognize the 50th anniversary for Barbados this year for its independence. And I'd also like to recognize my great uncle, Robert Tate, who will be 101 years old this year. Hopefully I can live longer than him. And I just want to say God bless the island country of Barbados. Thank you so much.
We taking a question on this? This resolution has already been adopted on a resolution calendar today. Thank you, Senator Hamilton. Senator DeFrancisco.
It's also open for co-sponsorship.
The resolution is also open for co-sponsorship. Should you choose not to be a co-sponsor, please notify the desk. Senator DeFrancisco.
All right, now can we take up the non-controversial reading of the calendar?
Secretary will read.
Calendar number 169 by Senator Laval, Senate Print 2926, enacting in relation to authorizing.
There's a home rule message at the desk. Secretary will read the last section.
Section 2, this act should take effect immediately.
Call the roll.
Adabo, Flanagan, Klein, Stewart, Cousins, Young. Ayes 58.
The bill is passed.
Calendar number 260 by Senator Funky, Senate Print 3144A, enactment of the General Municipal Law.
Last section.
Section 5, this act should take effect immediately.
Call the roll.
Adabo, Flanagan, Klein, Stewart, Cousins, Young.
Results.
In relation to calendar 260, those recorded in the negative are Senators Comrie, Espaillat, Montgomery, Peralta, Perkins, and Squadron. Ayes 52, nays 6.
Bill's passed.
Calendar number 310 by Senator Griffo, Senate Print 2715, enactment of the banking law.
Last section.
Section 4, this act should take effect on the 1st of November.
Call the roll.
Adabo, Flanagan, Klein, Stewart, Cousins, Young. In relation to calendar 310, those recorded in the negative are Senators Hassel Thompson, Montgomery, and Perkins. Ayes 55, nays 3.
Bill's passed.
Calendar number 346 by Senator Golden, Senate Print 4919A, enactment of the Alcoholic Beverage Control Law.
Last section.
Section 2, this act should take effect immediately.
Call the roll.
Adabo, Flanagan, Klein, Stewart, Cousins, Young. Ayes 58.
Bill's passed.
Calendar number 347 by Senator Diaz, Senate Print 463, enactment of the Penal Law.
Last section.
Section 3, this act should take effect on the 1st of November.
Call the roll.
Adabo, Flanagan, Klein, Stewart, Cousins, Young. In relation to calendar 347, those recorded in the negative are Senators Montgomery, Parker, and Perkins. Ayes 55, nays 3.
Bill's passed.
Calendar number 462 by Senator Kennedy, Senate Print 1417, enactment of the Penal Law.
Last section.
Section 3, this act should take effect on the 1st of November.
Call the roll.
Adabo, Flanagan, Klein, Stewart, Cousins, Young. Ayes 58.
Bill's passed.
Calendar number 473 by Senator Marcelino, Senate Print 2173, enactment of the Civil Rights Law.
Last section.
Section 3, this act should take effect immediately.
Call the roll.
Adabo, Flanagan, Klein, Stewart, Cousins, Young. Ayes 58.
Bill's passed.
Calendar number 550 by Senator Seward, Senate Print 7104, enact amend the insurance law.
Last section.
Section 9, the statute take effect immediately.
Call the roll.
Addabbo, Flanagan, Klein, Stewart, Cousins, Young. Ayes 58.
Bills passed.
Calendar number 615 by Senator Lanza, Senate Print 7181, enact amend Chapter 704 of the laws of 1991.
Last section. Laid aside.
Calendar number 641 by Senator Gallivan, Senate Print 6790, enact amend the general municipal law.
Last section.
Section 2, the statute take effect immediately.
Call the roll.
Addabbo, Flanagan, Klein, Stewart, Cousins, Young.
Senator Kruger to explain her vote.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise to explain my vote no on this bill. Some people might read this bill and just think it's expanding the possibility of 50-50 charitable raffles. But if you actually read the bill and think about it a bit, it would actually allow major sporting teams and other locations to have almost rolling, ongoing raffles in an electronic lottery-like model, as long as they could find some not-for-profit organization to participate. And I fear that we would actually be replacing or supplementing a new lottery for the state of New York at sporting events with little oversight and very little discussion or questioning whether this legislative body wants to expand what I call video crack that goes on in bars throughout this state to every site where there are sporting events. And I have to say, we continue to pass bills in this House that expand gambling without all of the muss and fuss of the licensing process for lottery and casinos and racetracks. And we just are creating a secondary tier of legal, but nobody's really looking at it, giant gambling models. So I'm voting no, Mr. President, and I hope that before this becomes a law in the state of New York, other people take a look at what the ramifications could be. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Kruger to be recorded in the negative. Announce the results.
Ayes 57, nays 1. Senator Kruger recorded in the
The
negative.
bill's passed.
Calendar number 642 by Senator Gallivan, Senate Print 70B, enact amend the vehicle and traffic law.
Last section.
Section 2, the statute take effect immediately.
Call the roll.
Addabbo, Flanagan, Klein, Stewart, Cousins, Young. Ayes 58.
Bill's passed.
Calendar number 643 by Senator Gallivan, Senate Print 150A, enact amend the vehicle and traffic law.
Last section.
Section 2, the statute take effect immediately.
Call the roll.
Addabbo, Flanagan, Klein, Stewart, Cousins, Young. Ayes 57, nays 1. Senator Espaillat recorded in the negative.
Bill's passed.
Calendar number 644 by Senator Marcelino, Senate Print 458, enact amend the vehicle and traffic law.
Last section.
Section 4 of the statute take effect on the 1st of November.
Call the roll.
Addabbo, Flanagan, Klein, Stewart, Cousins, Young. Ayes 58.
Bill's passed.
Calendar number 646 by Senator Marcelino, Senate Print 732, enact amend the vehicle and traffic law.
Last section.
Section 2 of the statute take effect on the 1st of November.
Call the roll.
Addabbo, Flanagan, Klein, Stewart, Cousins, Young. Ayes 58.
Bill's passed.
Calendar number 647 by Senator Robach, Senate Print 1961, enact amend the vehicle and traffic
Read the
law.
last section.
Section 2 of the statute take effect on the 1st of November.
Call the roll.
Addabbo, Flanagan, Klein, Stewart, Cousins, Young.
Senator Kruger to explain her vote.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise to explain my no vote. While certainly nobody wants anyone to be driving vehicles while under the influence of alcohol or drugs, when you look at the research about the validity of swab tests in a street police stop situation, there's an enormous possibility of a false positive. It will potentially mean many people who currently would not be dragged into a police precinct to have to be brought in for follow-up blood and urine tests. It could potentially result in large numbers of people who take legal prescribed drugs that are not mind-altering, but some of the most common drugs Americans take. Lipitor, for example, high blood pressure medicine, testing positive with the swabs at the side of a road. And in fact, it raises the additional question of, now the police have your DNA from this swab, even though They may never bring any charge at all, and you did nothing wrong. Your DNA would then be in the system, and I don't think this bill reasonably addresses the handling of DNA collected from all these swabs, on top of my concerns that this actually isn't a model that would provide legitimate information to police officers making the judgment call at the time on the side of the road. So I'm voting no, Mr. President, in the hopes that more research can be done about how or why these swabs would be valuable to law enforcement, could ensure not having so many false positives, potentially having citizens brought into police headquarters unnecessarily, and finally, our needing to address the question of who has the rights to that DNA from that swab, since in many circumstances, you would never even be arrested. And I know that this legislative body has dealt with, in complicated ways, the question of when does the government have the right to keep and store your DNA if you have neither been charged with anything or found guilty. So I'll be voting no for all those reasons, Mr. President. Thank you.
Senator Kruger to be recorded in the negative. Announce the results.
In relation to calendar 647, those recorded in the negative are Senators Hoylman, Kruger, Montgomery, Penapinto, and Perkins. Ayes 53, nays 5.
Bill is passed.
Calendar number 650 by Senator Lanza, Senate Print 4050, enactment of vehicle and traffic law.
Be the last section.
Section 2, the statute take effect immediately.
Call the roll.
Adabo, Flanagan, Klein, Stewart, Cousins, Young. Ayes 57, nays 1. Senator Perkins recorded in the negative.
Bill is passed.
Wait. In relation to calendar 650, those recorded in the negative are Senators DeLon and Perkins. Ayes 56, nays 2.
The bill passes.
Calendar number 652 by Senator Martin, Senate Print 4649A, enactment of vehicle and traffic law.
Last section.
Section 2, the statute take effect on the 90th day.
Call the roll.
Adabo, Flanagan, Klein, Stewart, Cousins, Young. Ayes 57, nays 1. Senator Perkins recorded in the negative.
Bill is passed.
Calendar number 655 by Senator Croce, Senate Print 6586, enactment of vehicle and traffic law.
Last section.
Section 2, the statute take effect on the 90th day.
Call the roll.
Adabo, Flanagan, Klein, Stewart, Cousins, Young. Ayes 58.
Bill is passed.
Calendar number 658 by Senator Gallivan, Senate Print 401A, enactment of the State Administrative Procedure Act.
Last section.
Section 2, the statute take effect immediately.
Call the roll.
Adabo, Flanagan, Klein, Stewart, Cousins, Young.
Results.
In relation to calendar 658, those recorded in the negative are Senators Avella, Comrie, Hassel-Thompson, Hoylman, Kruger, Montgomery, Perkins, Rivera, Serrano, and Squadron. Also, Senator Espaillat. Ayes 47, nays 11.
The bill is passed.
Calendar number 659 by Senator Gallivan, Senate Print 406A, enactment of State Administrative Procedure Act.
Last section.
Section 4, the statute take effect immediately.
Call the roll.
Adabo, Flanagan, Klein, Stewart, Cousins, Young. Ayes 58.
Bill is passed.
Calendar number 677 by Senator Klein, Senate Print 852A, enactment of Social Services Law.
Last section.
Section 2, the statute take effect on the 1st of January.
Call the roll.
Adabo, Flanagan, Klein, Stewart, Cousins, Young. Ayes 58.
Bill is passed.
Calendar number 682 by Senator Carlucci, Senate Print 1422, enact to direct.
Last section.
Section 4, the statute take effect immediately.
Call the roll.
Adabo, Flanagan, Klein, Stewart, Cousins, Young. Ayes 58.
Bill is passed.
Calendar number 684 by Senator Marcelino, Senate Print 1921A, enactment of tax law.
Last section.
Section 4, the statute take effect immediately.
Call the roll.
Adabo, Flanagan, Klein, Stewart, Cousins, Young. Ayes 58.
Bill is passed.
Calendar number 685 by Senator Larkin, Senate Print 2254, enactment of the education law.
Last section.
Section 2, the statute take effect immediately.
Call the roll.
Adabo, Flanagan, Klein, Stewart, Cousins, Young. Ayes 58.
Bill is passed.
Calendar number 689 by Senator Ort, Senate Print 3113, an act amending the education law.
Last section.
Section 2, this act should take effect immediately.
Call the roll.
Adabo, Flanagan, Klein, Stewart, Cousins, Young. Ayes 58.
Bills passed.
Calendar number 694 by Senator Ritchie, Senate Print 6613, an act amending the agriculture and markets law.
Last section.
Section 2, this act should take effect immediately.
Call the roll.
Adabo, Flanagan, Klein, Stewart, Cousins, Young. Ayes 57, nays 1. Senator Espaillat recorded in the negative.
Bills passed.
Calendar number 695 by Senator Avella, Senate Print 887A, an act amending the administrative code of the City of New York.
Last section.
Section 2, this act should take effect immediately.
Call the roll.
Adabo, Flanagan, Klein, Stewart, Cousins, Young. Ayes 58.
Bills passed.
Calendar number 706 by Senator Felder, Senate Print 7395, an act amending the general city law.
Read the last section.
Section 2, this act should take effect immediately.
Call the roll.
Adabo, Flanagan, Klein, Stewart, Cousins, Young. Ayes 58.
Bills passed. Senator DeFrancisco, that completes the non-controversial reading of today's active list calendar.
Can we read the one bill on the controversial calendar?
Secretary will ring the bell, and the Secretary will read.
Calendar number 615 by Senator Lanza, Senate Print 7181, an act amending Chapter 704 of the laws of 1991.
Some order in the House, please. Senator Squadron.
Thank you, Mr. President. If the sponsor would yield.
Senator Lanza, do you yield? Senator yields.
I thank the sponsor. This is a bill that extends New York's broken ticket reselling law. I'd like to ask the sponsor, in what way is this bill different than the bill that extended the ticket reselling law in 2015?
Mr. President, there are no substantive changes over last year's extender.
Thank you. If the sponsor will continue to yield.
Yes, Mr. President.
Sponsor yields.
And substantive changes since 2014?
There are none, Mr. President.
And the sponsor will continue to yield.
Yes, Mr. President.
Sponsor yields.
For purposes of time, substantive changes since 2013, 2012, 2011, or 2010's ticket reselling bill.
Mr. President, the improvement is in this legislation, this extender, is that if action is not taken, the current law will sunset on midnight of this month, the 14th. And I think most people with sense realize that this legislation is a tremendous improvement over what would occur if we were not to act with this extender.
If the sponsor will continue to yield.
Yes, Mr. President.
Sponsor yields.
Is the sponsor aware that a member of the minority in this House, in voting against this bill up against the deadline, said, quote, a report has to be done, some study has to be done. The chairman of the investigations committee, my colleague, could well have done this, should have, in my mind, done this as a service and issued a report himself. As a committee, should have issued a report on this thing and let us know what's going on here. We know the facts on this bill. We need to know the facts on this bill. And until we do, and I don't often do this, I'm going to agree with NYPIRG because I think they're correct. I think the taxpayers are getting the shaft on this one, and they're not getting the fair share. Is the sponsor aware that a member of the minority in voting against this bill up against the deadline said exactly that?
Mr. President, I'll take Senator Squadron's word, and therefore I am now aware.
If the sponsor will continue to yield.
Yes, Mr. President.
Sponsor yields.
Would it surprise the sponsor to hear that that member of the minority was a member of the sponsors' conference in 2009 when a very similar bill was being extended up against the deadline?
Mr. President, I think that is no surprise to anyone in this chamber, given where Senator Squadron is going this afternoon.
Thank you. And I thank the sponsor for anticipating where I was going, and if you would continue to yield.
Yes, Mr. President.
Sponsor yields.
Thank you. The sponsor also aware that Chair of the Investigations and Government Operations Committee promised in 2014 that we would talk about amendments to that bill, as the sponsor has said, substantively identical to this bill, quote, in the coming weeks, and that those conversations here 2 years later have never happened.
Mr. President, Senator Squadron continues to enlighten me.
The sponsor will continue to yield.
Yes, Mr. President.
Sponsor yields.
Thank you. In that context, in which we are now on the seventh iteration of an identical bill that both from the perspective of voting against the bill in the minority and from the perspective of chairing, and a member of your own conference has agreed we need more information on before we just extend it. Doesn't the sponsor agree that we need significant more understanding of this issue and substantive conversation before yet again giving another year to this broken law?
Mr. President, first, I'm not sure that I agree with Senator Squadron's characterization that this is a broken law. I know for a fact that most people with good sense would agree that if we were not to act, we would certainly revert to a broken law, and that would occur on May 14th of this year. And so I think it's important that we act in order to avoid what clearly folks on both sides of the aisle in two houses and the governor all agreed was truly a broken law.
If the sponsor will continue to yield.
Yes, Mr. President.
Is the sponsor aware of, for the record, since I know the answer and I appreciate the conversations we've had on this, for the record, is the sponsor aware of the Attorney General's report from this past year called Obstructed View, What's Blocking New Yorkers from Getting Tickets, that highlighted a large number of problems with the existing law?
Mr. President, yes, I am. And in fact, as chair of the Investigations Committee, I have engaged in many conversations with the Attorney General and have worked with others within the subject matter here to move forward with respect to what, if any, changes need to be made to the current law. And in fact, there are a number of pieces of legislation that are pending. For instance, with respect to so-called bots, I am confident that very shortly we will be introducing and hopefully voting upon legislation in this chamber which will make the bots, which will become the strongest anti-bots legislation in the nation.
And if the sponsor will continue to yield.
Yes, Mr. President.
Sponsor yields.
First of all, I appreciate the work the sponsor has done on that in coordination with the Attorney General, and look forward to that bill and do believe that the potential for that bill to deal with the bots issue is real. I would rather we saw them at the same time, but let's move past the bots issue for that reason. Is the sponsor aware that in the Attorney General's report, it was also, the Attorney General said that some brokers sell speculative tickets, meaning that they sell tickets they do not have, but expect to be able to purchase after locking in a buyer, which are a risk to consumers and drive up prices even before tickets are released?
Mr. President, yes, I'm aware, and in fact, the current law, which we would be extending today, deals with that very issue. If this bill were not to pass and become law, we would revert to the old law, which does nothing to address that issue.
The sponsor will continue to yield.
Yes, Mr. President.
Sponsor yields.
It's critical that we don't revert to a law passed in the 1920s for long, but is the sponsor's contention that if this bill is not signed into law by May 14th, that will be the impact and chaos will reign in the ticket selling market in New York State?
Mr. President, it's my contention that if we do not extend the current law, it will sunset by operation of law on midnight, May 14th. And so as a matter of law, yes, that's precisely what will happen. We will go back to the old law, which didn't work, which truly was broken. And to reminisce about my childhood, when that law was in existence, it meant that only the well-heeled, the wealthy, or the well-connected even had access to a concert or to a Yankees playoff game or a Yankees World Series game, and for Joe Roebuck, even a Mets World Series game. And so the current law has allowed for a free market for resale. It has required licensing for ticket resellers. It has created buffer zones where tickets cannot be resold near venues. It has provided for civil penalties for bots to procure tickets. I think we all agree that that is where the real problem currently exists with respect to the initial offering tickets, where because of the actions of bots, Many of those tickets, for all intensive purposes, are not available to any of us. And as I've said, I'm very confident that we will soon be voting on the strongest bots legislation in the nation, which will impose criminal sanctions with respect to the use of bots, and I think will go a long way in creating greater access at the initial offering prices, and of course would still allow for the secondary market to allow for the access that currently exists to tickets for events and sporting events in this state, which really did not exist unless, as I said, you were well-heeled, wealthy, or well-connected.
The sponsor will continue to yield.
And, Mr. President, I think it would be a mistake to go back to that sort of system. And that's what would happen if we were not to vote and enact this extender. Yes, Mr. President, I yield.
Sponsor yields.
Is the sponsor aware of the fact that in both 2009 and 2010, the law expired before being renewed? In the case of 2010, it was renewed with some modifications. The law was not passed in 2009 until June 1st. It's not passed in 2010 until June 30th. And chaos did not reign. The ticket market continued to sputter along in the way that it has, with an enormous advantage for brokers and venues at the cost of consumers and fans, with things like speculative sales and early sales to brokers, with as well more than 50% of tickets, according to the Attorney General, not being made available for sale to the public, with markups that were shocking and sort of a continual withholding of tickets that creates a shortage situation. That all did continue in 2009 and 10, but the law did not, and chaos did not reign. So I would ask, since we know that we did this twice before, could we delay this, do some hearings, figure out improvements beyond the bots, and hope to have a better ticket reselling law so that Groundhog's Day does not continue to reign in this chamber?
Mr. President, first of all, it is Senator Squadron's characterization that there would be chaos. It is not mine, but I'll work with him. In the past, budgets were not passed on the date by law they should have been passed either, but that's not the way we ought to proceed. As a matter of law, if this is not extended, on May 14th, 2016, we will revert to the old law. Now, call it chaos or any other, give it any other description that you might want to assign to it. The bottom line is, as a matter of law, we would be operating under the old law. And under the old law, perhaps not chaotic, but certainly a system that allowed only the well-heeled, the wealthy, and the well-connected to have access to tickets, to concerts, events, and sporting events. And so while I would not say or call that chaotic, I would call that a great shame and wrong, and we should not go back there. We should do our duty and extend the law. And I want to point out, because Senator Squadron, I understand, is saying that there is a better way, but Senator Squadron, I've watched on numerous occasions, often use a bill's one-house status as a reason to oppose it. And as he knows, in order to get something done in our state legislatively, you need the Senate, the Assembly, and the governor. And with respect to this issue, there is only one bill where there is agreement between the Senate, the Assembly, and the governor. And it is this extender, which is why I think it is imperative for us to vote for this extender today. And of course, we can continue the conversation with respect to where we can find further agreement between the Assembly, the Senate, and the governor on continued improvements. As I've already indicated, I think the major piece that we can all agree on is further prohibitions with respect to the issue of bots.
If the sponsor will continue to yield.
Yes, Mr. President.
Sponsor yields.
The sponsor continually refers to the well-heeled, the well-connected, and the wealthy benefiting under the old system. So just to clarify, the sponsor does not believe that large venues like Madison Square Garden, large ticket sellers like Ticketmaster, and brokers who are able to purchase thousands upon thousands of tickets at a time are well-connected, well-heeled, and wealthy. They're the regular fans that this law benefits.
So, Mr. President, Senator Squadron knows that under the old law, the people that I've described repeatedly, let's just say this. The ordinary citizen of our state rarely had access to desirable events in this state. And that is a fact that anyone over the age of, I would say, 25 could certainly attest to with respect to their experience.
The sponsor will continue to yield.
Yes, Mr. President.
Sponsor yields.
Does the sponsor believe that brokers, according to the Attorney General, marking up the price of tickets by an estimated 49% on average makes it easier for regular folks to purchase those tickets?
Mr. President, this is what I do know. Because of the creation of a secondary free market with respect to tickets for events in this state, tickets are now more accessible to more people than they ever have been before, and certainly were under the old law. We cannot go or revert back to the old law when only the wealthy, the well-heeled, and the well-connected had access to tickets. And that's what I'm speaking about, Mr. President. I'm not talking about who is making money, how they're making the money, where they're making the money. I'm talking about access to tickets. And I think the goal for all of us ought to be, to the extent that we care about this issue, that there be access to as many folks and citizens across the state, regardless of whether or not they are wealthy, well-connected, or well-heeled.
If the sponsor will continue to yield.
Yes, Mr. President.
Sponsor yields.